Today we have a very special guest, Alan Troy. And Alan, my name is Tashieanna O'Connor. Thank you for joining Childcare Challenges and Dilemma within Daycare. And we could discuss about some of the challenges you had when you was a teacher's aide, you said, correct?
Yeah, school aid also.
A school aide. Okay, you was a school aide. And what
Yeah.
in the school system and what drove you to change job and you said pre-pandemic and what was
Mhm.
before pre-pandemic and after pandemic and the fact that you love what you were doing and how could they allocate more funding and towards professional developmental and hiring more staff and better qualified people. So Alan, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thanks for having me. As you heard, I'm Alan Troy, and we're going to get into some of my experiences with the Department of Education. So I started in 2005, and it ended in 2020. I started off in the kitchen as a school lunch helper. And those experiences were part time, and it was great. It was great. But working with school food, it's different. But the hours are for lunch, so you're out of there about 2:45, 3 p.m. So moving along to about 20, I want to say 2015, I was a school aide, which consisted of being outside of the kitchen and just dealing with children during their recess and their lunch.
And during those how did you how was the experience with staff and the student?
Well, with the students, it was great. They need their time to unwind when they eat, and you see the kids who may really be starving, not really starving, but hungry more than the rest or more than usual. So you just make sure they get enough food during their lunch period, and make sure they're okay during their lunch.
Okay. So
Mhm.
you're saying there's more kids that was more hungry than the others, right? So
Yeah.
that are more hungry than the others. And when days come that you don't have enough food to supply for those kids that are more in need, is there ever a moment that you guys didn't have enough for them?
Maybe not often. If I had to say, maybe 12% of the time.
And
12% of the time, but they did a good job making sure if any kid was hungry after lunch, they would bring them down, or before lunch, they would bring them down to get, you know, a bite to eat or a snack or anything like that.
okay, that's good.
We would, and if we had extra, we would provide.
Okay, so 12%,
Hmm.
but 12% of the time is a lot.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
New York.
yeah.
So, as far as staffing, as we was discussing earlier about professional development, how would you go about that? What do you have to say about that?
The staff to staff experience wasn't the greatest. We had some people in positions who you would thought would be professional at all times, and that just wasn't the case. It was a lot of micromanaging, it was a lot of nitpicking, and it was a lot of school aides who were asked to do things that were out of their job title.
Give me an example of some of those things that do, school aid had to do out of their job title.
So there were I had pre-K. No, I had kindergarten at lunch, and I had second graders, and I had fourth graders. Now, the kindergartners were a bit much because, you have 10 to 15 toddlers, running around during lunch. It can be a bit challenging. And some kids need more attention than most. And you kind of identify with those children. So you kind of like deal with them a little bit one on one.
Mhm.
And the more I did that, it wasn't recognized, it wasn't appreciated, because some of these kids had behavioral issues and didn't have, an IEP set up. So, I wasn't in a position to diagnose any kid with anything, but you kind of know what kid needs more attention and what kid may need a one-on-one para. So now you have me acting almost as a para just during their lunch period, and you have other children that you have to look out for. Each school aide usually has two classes during lunch, each lunch period to look after. So you're talking about maybe 25 to 30 kids.
With one person, one staff.
per lunch aid. So you have two tables. If you have two, you have a class of 15. You have two classes. So
So then there has to be a shortage of fund there for them just to be able to hire one person,
yeah,
one staff member. So there was definitely shortage of fund there. Because that's a lot for one staff to handle 15, 30 kids just by themselves.
yeah, and the other school aides were there, and they had their tables, or they can kind of, if they had like absent children, they can come over and assist. However, some of the second graders, they grown attached to me, so they would, when they went back to their classrooms, they had like behavioral issues where they just wouldn't respond to their second grade teacher, and I would actually step in and assist and help, or just pop up by their classroom, just little things that the human being would do, just to lend a helping hand, just to say, hey, I'm here. And they're like, Mr. Allen, and then they'll calm down. Or, I didn't get paid for that. I
Oh,
didn't get paid for assisting with behavior issues with children, because that was out of my position.
and then so that means they were short staffed and then insane.
Yeah. I mean, because if a kid needs a para, you hire a para. Yeah. And
Right.
I wasn't the para.
Okay. And that's why they short staffed, and that means there wasn't enough funding in the system for them that you have to step in aside from your job as an aide and step in and help the teacher out with a power, like you said,
Mhm.
and I guess a lot of people don't understand, but who, like I said earlier, who we vote in have a
Mhm.
do, with passing laws and allocating funds to us and giving us funds when it comes on to early education and education and overall. And
Mhm.
every year they give you a certain amount of fund that you have to distribute. Yeah, the school would have to allocate it and where they need it to go to. If you had to go about, okay, then solving these problems, how would you let your rep know? How would you let your elected official know? What suggestion would you give them?
I would really consider getting letters of discomfort at the workplace from other employees, just so we can like send our grievance. And like, if we would speak with a rep, we would tell them, well, this could be better. The
So,
shortage of staff, the extra work, the extra additional help inside of the classroom, what could we do to be compensated for that, or staying later, or coming in earlier, or just accepting like school supply packages in the middle of doing something else, and having to deliver to each classroom. Some of these things were a part of our job description, and some of them weren't. So that, like you said, there was a shortage of staff, where you're just all over the place. One minute you're dealing with a child who really needs someone's attention, an adult attention, right then and there, and then the next moment you're like delivering copy paper to an office where you have to walk up the stairs because there's no elevator access. So they used me a lot. I was a workhorse, so
mhm,
they used me a lot during that time. So I would say literally writing these things down to present to a union rep,
mhm.
opposed to just being coming to work and just not having the greatest experience. I think that would be the step one, to just write everything down that you're dealing with, so you can get a couple witnesses and other colleagues that may experience the same thing, have them do it as well, and try to submit it.
Okay, and by testimony showing up, that's a lot how we could get involved. Two,
Yeah.
a lot of testifying, a lot of showing up, like you said, a lot of writing letters, a lot of email, always get to know who represents you. And
Hmm.
biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand, because those are where your vote goes. When you vote in and you're voting, you got to know where your vote goes. A lot of people are like, well, my vote doesn't count. Every vote counts.
Every vote counts. Yes.
Every vote counts, because the moment you don't vote, you're saying I don't care, and then we let the problem like this, and then you want solution. But
Mhm.
remember, the fact that you did not vote This is how we don't get solution. And if we don't write, we don't testify, we don't show up, then how can we get a solution? How can we expect a solution for a problem if we don't help solving it? Now, okay, so how they agreed to say, all right, we will give you more funding. But how what would you say the more funding for? Where do you see the weakness?
I would say hiring paras. Like I feel like there's not enough children who are getting the proper attention in our communities. So maybe counselors, like one-on-one workers who can really identify with issues, that children may have. Because every kid is different. Every kid is, may have something going on at home, may not eat enough at home, may, make it comfortable for them to speak to an adult about what's potentially going on that we don't get to hear about. Because a lot of the parents are young, a lot of them have multiple kids and it's tough. A lot of them are single. So as a parent, they may not speak up, and the kids may not feel safe enough to speak up. I don't know if it's our place to decide, but we should be available, you know, in case. So it should be a para. It should be more counselors hired in that department.
Okay, okay. All right. I know you said earlier about the experience with staff, right? And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, like for example, in the state of Connecticut, we have to do professional development. What would
Mhm.
you think about suggest about that in the school system that you worked in?
I think a lot of these schools, again, I started from 2005 all the way through to 2020. So I feel a lot of these administration jobs and hirees are word of mouth. I think it's their friend or friend of the family who they hire that aren't really qualified to be in that office or professional enough to deal with day-to-day communication with other staff members. If you were just a fly on the wall, you will hear the conversations that goes on in these offices, and God forbid if any kids pick up any habits or language that you kind of hear in these situations in these offices. So I just think that it should be a thorough interview. It should be, you should qualify for the position that you're being hired for, and not just because that's your neighbor or cousin or whoever the case may be. I mean, and being realistic, yeah, we want to hire friends, but I can't bring my friend to my studio gig if he doesn't have experience.
Our inner city kids are suffering because the most because of underqualified staff.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's underqualified staff. And I know that infrastructure, right? And what do you think about infrastructure?
I feel like it starts at the top, right? You have a principal. Like, for instance, my daughter is in a school in Harlem, and I really don't identify with the principal there. I deal with the assistant principal, and at the pre-K graduation, I'm sorry, the 3K graduation, I didn't even recognize the principal. She doesn't come around and shake hands. She's not very, you know, friendly or inviting as the assistant principal. So it's like it starts at the top. If you're running this school, you got to get out there. You have to be friendly. You have to run it right. You can't throw your staff that's under you out there to do your work.
They believe that, in other words, unequal is that these kids are suffering from not having the support system that they need, especially from the top, from the principal who's supposed to be setting an example for his
Yeah,
members. Okay, and our inner city, unfortunately, children are the one that's suffering from all these stuff. Because and especially with large school, like when I went to PS3 in the Bronx, that's by Highland,
yeah.
Gunner Road over that area. It was a lot. It's a lot. And but like I said, most of them are single parents. How do we help these single parents?
I feel like when you have the meetings, the parent teachers association, make it a safe space. Make it a safe space. Have a meeting. I know. Well, I don't know. I don't know how the conversations go between parents and teachers
Uh-huh.
at their meetings. But I feel like it should be a safe space where they can communicate on if anything's tough at home, without it being, without the assumption of the parent isn't doing their best
Mhm.
or trying to do their best. For example, a lot of these uh, not paras, I'm sorry, school aides or administration people at the school where my daughter is, they'll say like, "Oh, this kid has the same socks on from yesterday," or this kid is wearing this same shirt. Like they assume the kid is not being taken care of, or they assume it's an ACS situation. Like without even speaking to a parent is kind of just the assumption is just weird. It's like, well, speak to the mom or speak to the dad or the grandparent who comes in and try to find out what's going on before you just assume that the kid is being neglected or laundry is not being done or anything like that. It's kind of unfortunate that we have people in these positions that are just like one track mind, like not even trying to lend a conversation to maybe this parent needs some type of help or assistance.
You said you was working there from 2005 to 2020. Uh,
Correct.
and you said that before you was working 8 hours. And what happened after the pandemic? Explain that to me.
Prior to the pandemic, I was working 8 hours. When the pandemic happened, everyone went remote, obviously, and those extra 4 hours that I was getting were cut, and I was asked to be on. I was asked to join on like a Zoom call with a classroom. That's not really a position. I get it. We was going through something that we've never gone through in this day and age with the pandemic, but they wanted all school aides to be assigned to a classroom for, I guess, 3 hours or 4 hours a day. And it just wasn't realistic because that wasn't our duty in house.
Mm.
We would have the kids during lunch, so I get it. They wanted to make sure people were showing up online. It was just a weird time, but they cut everyone's hours. So I had to find, a new job.
So within those 3 hours that you were logged on, what was your title? What were you doing within those 3 hours?
We were all sitting like this while the teacher and the students interacted. Like what position would that be? It's just like being a fly on the wall in a Zoom call. It's like our mic, we say good morning and we say good evening, like have a good night, like just to show that we were there. Like I could literally turn this on, and at the time my daughter was born. She was born 4 days before the world changed. So I had an infant, so I didn't have time to like literally sit in front of a computer during this time and just listen to a classroom. Yeah, it wasn't real. It wasn't a real job. you
No.
know,
Okay.
our job was physical.
And then you say your hours were cut. Let me ask you a question. If you had, they said the Zoom, they said your hours cut 3 hours to 3 hours, and that's why you had to find something else. If they had did offer you the same 8 hours by Zoom, you're getting the same pay, would you have stayed?
I think I would have stayed because one, I didn't really have a choice. I still had to wait because the world was shut down. So yeah, I think I would have stayed. I would have continued to log on. But a very unique thing happened where I wasn't getting my pay. So the world the world shut down
Mhm.
March 19th, 2020, where everybody went remote. So I had to file for unemployment. I didn't get my pay and until I want to say right before June. I got all my checks from March all the way up until June and a letter stating that I was terminated because I failed to log in on a Zoom call of a classroom. So would you go to work without pay?
Really, you was working without pay.
Yeah. So they expected me to work every day
Mhm.
without a paycheck every week, every 2 weeks, bi-weekly. So once that first check didn't come, my antennas go up. I say, hey, you guys have all my information. Send the checks in the mail.
Mhm.
They were so struck on, oh, you have to go to such and such school to pick up your payroll. Mind you, we've never had to do that before pandemic. So why should we have to do that now? Whoever had like the direct deposit and everything, they were getting their pay. Me, I didn't have that set up at that moment because I had a different account for, you know, saving for my kids and everything. I didn't want that money coming there. So I was getting paper checks still. So when the pandemic happened, it was like, okay, just give me the check, print out the check. They didn't want to send it. And then by the time they sent it, that principal wrote a termination letter for me, which I can still go to Long Island City and submit my case because I'm still in the system. I was just relieved from that school.
Mm-hmm.
So when the world opened back up, I never went back there. By then, I was working for hotels, and it was just a mess. And it wasn't handled the greatest because if you're filling out a job application and you have my social, you have my address, in the case of an emergency, wouldn't you be able to send me a letter,
Right.
a notice, mail, some type of thing?
So you feel like that you was treated unfairly.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the lack of professionalism that we have in the Department of Education.
Okay. So you feel like more training for more professional training will help solve this problem.
Absolutely. Or just common sense. It's like you see my address, you see my name, you see my social, you see the phone number, you know how to contact me, so
It all goes to training and how to handle people and how to deal with people, right?
professionalism.
Right.
Professionalism.
So, and this is where we need more funding to start training staff better. We need to implement a permanent fix on the infrastructure system. What about technology? When it comes on to technology for the student, how is it when you deal with them?
In that case, they didn't really lack. When it was time to hand out tablets for the pandemic, they had every tablet. They handled that well.
They handle
They
that.
had every tablet. Parents lined up
Mm-hmm.
to receive tablets for remote learning. So as far as the technology, that department I have to say was up to standard.
Okay, that's good. So, so the biggest issue is the pay rate, like teacher salary, like staffing salary, your salary.
Staff and salary, I think, could be much better. I don't think teachers get paid enough. Honestly, my sister's a teacher in Brooklyn, and she's been teaching for 10 years, and she's actually almost done with her master's as well. So she started off in a daycare. I've seen it up front. I've seen it up close. So it's not just because her. I actually haven't seen her up close teaching, but as far as my experiences, as long as I've been in the system, these teachers, the teachers' assistants, the paras, the school aides, I feel like they're all underpaid.
You're all underpaid. So how do you see this fixing? How do you see 2 years, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? They see and they solve. Can they solve this?
We have to do the work now. We have to start the work now. I think yearly it can improve, but the small things have to happen. Like you're saying, the proper hiring, the proper background checking. Like you just can't put your friend to work head of payroll. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of these checks were short throughout my stint in in the board of ed, where I had to receive some of my back pay the following check because somebody messed up your hours or whatever. So it's a lot. So we would have to write letters of grievances and have meetings with our reps.
Let me ask a question. In New York, do you guys vote for who's the next board of ed? Do you guys have an election?
Yeah, they have meetings for like DC 37 and different districts. So they have I'm sorry. They have you know ways where like newsletters that come in the mail on who's who, where you just have to interact. You have to do the legwork and you have to follow up. And it's important to go to your union meetings too to see who's who, to see these names to vote for.
So that more participation of probably the staff, I should say, the work,
Mhm.
the teachers, the school aid, in order for change to happen. The
Yeah.
only way change is going to happen is if we make a change in it. The top 1 or the top 3%, as they call it, actually is not going to change if we don't decide to change it. And
Yeah.
if we radiate what we said earlier, letters, calling, phone calls, emails, right?
Hmm.
Email, and show up. You have
Yeah.
to go up to get solution. And I think that's the biggest issue with us as the inner city. We're too comfortable. We're too relaxed. We settle like, okay, as long as I'm getting a paycheck, I'm okay with it. You know,
Hmm.
pay my rent, I get to pay my stuff then we go again next paycheck, next month, we have the same issue. But it's time to have a permanent fix. And this is what I created a podcast because I want a permanent fixer to the system, to this broken system that we have. And
Yeah.
in the great country that we are in, and we should not have to be our youngest, our children should not have to be the one paying the price. Because,
Yeah.
as you said earlier, the children are attached to you. So they lost someone dear to them that, you had to sit there and go get another job. You have a family to feed as well. Right?
Hmm.
I can't blame you, and anyone would do that. It's not that you don't love what you did. You love the children, you love the
Yeah.
job, but better training, more money, more funding, more help along the way for you guys, so we can retain people like you to stay in your job and not switch it and
Yeah.
go where you're going to now. We have to like come together, form a petition. And that's what I would suggest for the inner city. Like you say, the sister is a teacher. And
Hmm.
I know I would love to interview her firsthand to see how it is
Hmm.
experience as a teacher, so you can let her know that I will
Yes, I will.
give her my email. And but I know firsthand that teachers' pay is the biggest thing. A lot of teachers work without health insurance, and a lot of them have to sit there and retirement 401k. A lot
Hmm.
of not getting paid in that, especially when we work in a daycare system like myself. You have to figure out how to you got to save that aside from you. And health insurance it's such a big deal, but we need to come up with something. We really do.
Yeah. We need to take the small steps and have a 5-year plan and not sit back and think that they're going to change things if we don't change. Down to the position I used to work in the kitchen, which was school lunch helper, which is the man who intakes the deliveries, he manages the stock room, he mops at the end of the day. He takes care of pest control if it's like you, you name it. All of like the dirty work. They will hire some guys for that position who were like drinking on the job or taking the extended lunch breaks where he's down the street and you're like, it's the middle of the school day. Like, who is this guy? Like, walking off the job or just calling out excessively. So it can go a long way if there's a different type of process when you're interviewing certain, potential employees that you're having around these children
Mhm.
because they see that too. They smell you. You can smell like alcohol from the next day or the last night or whatever the case. You don't want that around your child. Like these are the type of people who they hire. So it's ghetto.
Uh, we have to change the system, you're saying. We have to change the border ad and also from the border ad, put more pressure on the border ad.
Mhm.
And by putting more pressure on the border ad, it's who we elect again, who we voted for. Because when it comes, it's who these parents say that they want to represent them in the border ad. Who
Uh-huh.
feels going to speak out for them? Who's going to go into school and take pictures and read to the kids for 2 seconds and leave? Because that's all they do until they get in office. Then they completely forget about you.
And you don't recognize them the next time you see them. You see them one time and then that's it.
Right. And that's the changes that we need. Someone from the border and that's going to be more involved, right? That's going to be there for the kids, speak for the kids, and hold these schools accountable
Yes.
for their action. We need accountability, like you said. Having someone that drunk around your kids is unacceptable. It's definitely a no.
Hmm.
Figure out a way how we could hold these schools, especially for our inner city kids, the black and brown kids, are accountable. And black and brown kids are the one that's suffering the most.
We shouldn't take shortcuts on us. We shouldn't. We shouldn't try to take short or sweep it under the rug or whatever we want to say. we should give it 100% because a lot of these schools need it
Mm-hmm.
in the city. They need it.
So the next time, like you say, your daughter goes to school, I would suggest you show up.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm always there. That school 2 blocks away.
Your voice be heard. I know
Yeah.
have these town hall. I don't know if they have it in the Bronx. The town hall meeting,
Mm-hmm.
town hall meeting. Show up and share these concerns
Yeah.
with everything that's going on. One, I know they said one person can't move mountain, but when you
Yeah.
will have a fountain of people around you to help you move that mountain.
That's right.
But and I'm quite sure you're not the only one that's feeling this way. But a lot of people are afraid of speaking up. A lot of people are afraid of the repercussion, and that's why I believe that parents and staffing should be able to say how they want without have to think about the backfire, what's going to come back at them. I have a teacher that been working for the school system for over 25 years. And I
Mhm.
invite the person on my podcast, and they was like, I can't talk about it until I'm about to retire, but I don't want them I don't want to lose my retirement pay. I don't
Yeah.
benefit. I don't want to lose anything until after I get it. If we have a country that said a freedom of speech,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a freedom of speech because
It's
I
not.
can't say what he want to say and how
Yeah.
we feel until he retire. Where's our freedom of speech?
Yeah. Yeah. It's consequences. They want to say, oh, you could say what you want, but it's going to be consequences. That's not freedom. That's
Mhm.
not freedom of speech.
Exactly.
Yeah. You got.
It's not. I know you have to get to the baby. We're gonna cut it.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming in, and I want to thank you for being a part of the Childcare Podcast. Oh, she
Yeah.
Podcast and the dilemma within daycare. And
Yeah.
hopefully we can have a time where we can sit down again and, go over more. Anything you have, let me know. And I would love to interview your sister.
Absolutely. I'll give her a call. She should be home. I'll give her a call and tell her how this went, and she'll be happy to.
All right. Thank you. You have a good night.